Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, I am really excited to introduce today's guest, Rimi Chakraborty. Rimi guides companies and individuals to bridge traditional leadership with creative and emotional intelligence. A purpose-driven serial entrepreneur finds success at the intersection of health, happiness, and balanced living. Who wouldn't want that? Rimi holds an MBA from MIT Sloan, an engineering degree from the University of Pennsylvania, and has nearly 25 years of training and experience in yoga, mindfulness, and energy healing. Rimi provides leadership development consulting that focuses on whole person health, fostering enhanced employee engagement, morale, and general well-being. Rimi has brought her innovative tools and teaching to Fortune 500 companies, private companies, universities, and individuals. She is the co-founder of Rise Beyond Resilience to Root Silence and has a book coming out in October. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. Rimi lives in the Azores, Portugal, at her lodge and learning center, where she leads transformational retreats and leadership workshops. Please join me in welcoming Rimi Chakraborty. Welcome, Rimi.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. It's such a joy to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. And I'm so excited to have somebody from the Azores in Portugal. I don't know that I've ever interviewed somebody from there. I have friends from that region. But so as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to start with the early years, the formative years, and learn a little bit about that time in your life and how those may or may not have influenced where you are today. So take us back there, and we'll go from there.
Sure, Tammy. Well, yes, I'm in the Azores, but believe it or not, I was a Southern belle.
Ooh.
And my Northern Indian family moved to the U.S., and I was born in Alabama.
Wow.
So I spent my first 8 years in Alabama. My dad was working as a scientist at the university there. And we moved then to the Philadelphia area. And it was then when a lot of things happened in my life that now I can say really led me to where I am and who I am today. And so this was 1988, 89. We just moved to Philadelphia. And my parents are from India, both of them, and they met on their wedding day.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, arranged marriages, it's a whole different philosophy and culture. But I think when they moved to Philadelphia, they had a slew of bad luck, and their marriage started to fall apart. And as anyone coming from a broken home could tell you, it was really hard on me. I'm an only child. And there's a saying that, it's the kids that need the most help that call for attention in all the wrong ways.
Oh, boy. Mm-hmm.
So I was entering, my adolescence. I was 11, 12, and 13 in middle school. And I just got into a lot of trouble. My mom ended up falling into alcoholism, which was just a really hard thing for everyone. But I was living alone with her, and my dad and her had separated, of course. And so she was working night shift, and I had free reign to just get into trouble. Basically, I would come home from school, and there was no parenting until midnight, really. And long story short, I was in a gang. I nearly was expelled from my middle school. I was on a first name basis with the local police.
Wow.
And I remind listeners that it did turn out okay. I did go to all these great schools and reach these great levels of success.
Clearly.
So it is.
Yeah.
And it was a really hard time. But what happened was I finally got their attention, and it was decided that I would move in and live with my father and my stepmother. And I had the support of two parents at home when I came back from school. And sure, it wasn't a black and white transition from getting into trouble to being an angel, but it certainly was an enormous improvement, coupled with the fact that I went into this private school, which was a big sacrifice for my parents to make to enable me to go to this school, because they had to pay annual tuition, which was a big investment for them. And we were from a middle class, neighborhood, or middle class living, so it was a big deal. But that made all the difference. And in a lot of ways, I sort of erased that past. I just forgot about it. I numbed it out. I moved on. That high school led me to go to the University of Pennsylvania. I graduated magna cum laude. I always had this stint towards going for the top. And this was very much a value instilled from my family around, be the best you can be. It was, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer.
Wow.
And so I went into engineering school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in engineering school after I graduated that I then moved to New York City. And I ended up working on Wall Street, doing something totally unrelated to engineering. And it was this was, let's see, it was it was 2003. It was 2003. I was working on Wall Street, and I remember having to buy, fancy suits for my job and feeling just so cool that I was living in New York City as my first apartment out of college. It was kind of a dump, but it was New York City. And I worked my way to the top on Wall Street. I was working at an environmental insurance firm. And I quickly discovered, where's the A, so to speak, where's the top? How do I get there? And I was working for a company that would rank their employees based on how much revenue they brought in. Talk about pressure to perform. And so we had a monthly list of where you were in the lineup of about 200 people. And I worked my way to being number one there. I just pushed and worked my way to being number one. And they promoted me to be a manager. And at 26, I became a manager of, about a $36 million book of business that I was managing.
Wow.
Moved to Boston. Company moved me, which was incredible. I remember they came and packed up all my stuff, and they even packed up my trash because I didn't take it out. That was funny to me. And I moved into a tiny studio apartment in the South End of Boston. And so I found myself in a new city, in a new job, in a totally different culture than New York City. Boston, very different city. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my colleagues were like, who is this young, annoying, in-your-face New Yorker?
Yeah.
So I when I was there, again, I learned what was needed to grow. And a lot of that experience, so my company had told me that I was moving into a management position, but they didn't tell any of the other employees that I was working with. And so that created a really confusing situation. And I imagine a lot of companies do this, making promises, but then it's not necessarily official, so they can't announce it. And I've actually worked with companies who have this. And so it creates this very fuzzy space. And I remember I knew that this was happening, but no one else did. And so I learned a lot of these emotional intelligence skills, if you will, like these skills around, gosh, well, how do I get my teammates to trust me? And how do I get them to like me even? Because at first, of course, I came in with my New York attitude, which was very much a turnoff for these Boston folk.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm gonna go back a little bit because I always do this. What kind of engineering did you study at Penn?
Yeah, I studied something called systems engineering.
Okay. So
which is optimization of systems. So it's a lot of people from this engineering degree went into consulting. They went on to work at like the McKinseys or the Deloittes. So it was a lot of problem solving and optimization. And it was understanding, how does a system work where there's a community or a private sector with the public sector, with technical aspects and more social aspects. It was, how do all those pieces fit together?
I see. Okay. So then that clarifies a little bit how you translated that into your move to Wall Street then. A little bit more than if you had said, that you were a civil engineer or something. And then you went into the environmental insurance firm and they moved you to Boston. Is that right? You were still with them. So you were with the same company for several years, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, I made a change my first job out of college. And part of the reason I went into the field I went into was because I wanted to get out of Philadelphia. So I had grown up in Philadelphia. I had went to college in Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania. And I just really wanted to get out of Philly. It was just, I'd been there for I forget, 10, 15 years. I was just ready to go. And so the job, I was just because it was in New York. It didn't matter what job it was. I was just so happy to get out of Philly at the time. And I worked at a company, Marsh McLennan, doing environmental insurance for the corporate side. And then it was a lot of work we did was with the insurance companies. And then the insurance company plucked me from that firm. And that's when I went over to AIG.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. I see. So, so AIG is they moved you to Boston.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So, and picked up your garbage, which I think is hysterical.
I know.
So this is really interesting. I mean, there you are, you're still in your 20s, right? You're a manager. You've got probably people reporting to you. Then you're moved into this after being in New York, moving to Boston, which is like a village compared to New York, right? And I can only say that because I'm a native New Yorker who transplanted herself to Boston. So I know the difference. And I stayed in Boston. I still love New York, though. Just want to be clear about that.
And wait, are you a Red Sox fan now?
I'm Switzerland. I'm not big on sports in general or anything really super competitive in that way. I mean, growing up, this is really going to age me, but I really just loved like Mickey Mantle because I thought his name was really cool, or Tom Seaver because he was very popular at the time. So these are names that go way, way, way back. There's probably two people listening to this who even know who I'm talking about. And then, my husband's a native New Yorker too. He was a Mets fan, but we've been living here so long now, over 30 years, that I guess we root for the Red Sox. But I can play it cool if I'm if I'm in a room full of Yankees fans. I can play it cool. I'm curious then. So you moved to Boston. You've got this, New York persona, which I totally get. And, you're in and amongst these more, let's say reserved Bostonians.
Mm-hmm. They're also a lot older than me age-wise. Yeah.
Ah, okay. And so what do you think their understanding was of what your role was to be when you showed up on the scene?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I joined as a senior underwriter. So in insurance, there's the underwriter and then there's a senior underwriter. And then, that could be years between being an underwriter and senior underwriter. So I was promoted to being a senior underwriter when I was moving to Boston with the promise that I would be promoted to manager because I was moving where they wanted me to move. And so I should have mentioned earlier, one of the things I really wanted to get out of Philadelphia, I wanted to go to California. I always thought I was a West Coast girl. And I remember because I became number one underwriter at AIG, it was an incredible way to get the attention of senior management. And I sat down with the CEO and he took me to dinner and he said, what's important to you? And I said, I really want to live in California. And the next thing I know, they say, well, we don't have an opening there, but would you move to Boston? And that was when, and an interesting little tidbit, by the way, because I know that this is about practical tools. I had asked my trusted colleagues, like people I looked up to that I considered mentors, what should I ask for salary? Because they had said to me, what do you want for this? We're asking you to move. And I remember I asked a female mentor who I admired and I love and was really helpful. And her advice was like, don't be too pushy, just be grateful, ask them what they're willing to pay you, and, approach it as being really grateful that they're promoting you. And I also asked a male colleague of mine who had made a similar move for the company recently. And I asked him, and he said, oh, you should ask for double. You should ask for double what you're making, and they will definitely give it to you because you're doing them a huge favor. And it was like completely different advice, which was so interesting. And because, today women are still 82 cents on the dollar in the United States. And so I actually was really afraid, but I went in and I asked for double at my, what I was making, and I got it. And so I just have to put that in there because I think so often we just don't know how to ask.
Right. I'm so glad you told that story because, and it's not even about asking for double as much as just, really asking for what you wanted or what you think you're worth, as opposed to the other advice, which really, people can't see this, but I made quite a face when I heard the first piece of advice.
Yes, I saw your face. Yes.
And it's not even about the money. It's about really, I think, standing up for yourself, advocating for yourself, and knowing that you are going to put your best foot forward.
Yes. And being prepared with facts if you are asked how you came up with that number and et cetera. So that was really helpful advice. And I want to pass that along to anyone who that will benefit. Yeah.
Right. And not just in the context of a corporate engagement, but
anything.
That's good advice for those of us who are now, in the entrepreneurial space. I think that we really do have to take, a stand for what value we have to offer and stand by that. So that's really important. So you arrive in Boston as a senior underwriter. The people that you're working with are aware that you're a senior underwriter, but have no clue that you were promised an elevation from there. It sounds like within a reasonable period of time of your arrival here.
Yeah. So here's the kind of interesting story. So I joined, and my manager at the time, we didn't get along and at first. And so what worked for me in New York was being really aggressive. And for example, I would send a proposal as an underwriter for a deal. We were working with real estate developers who were buying property. It might have been contaminated and we needed to present a risk transfer solution. And so I would present the proposal. We were usually working with partners at law firms. And within minutes of sending the email, I would get on the phone, I would call them and I would say, did you get my proposal? And this aggressiveness, this being on top of it, this go-getter attitude was this bullish attitude, the bulldog attitude was what made me number one underwriter in the country. But when I went to Boston, that attitude, which I kept up because that's what I learned that worked, people were really turned off and they were like, why are you calling me? I haven't even opened your email yet. Like, go away. Like, and who is this young person that's like, doesn't know what she thinks she's all that. And it was a really interesting time. And I remember that boss and we ended up going on a road trip to upstate New York. They actually gave me a territory. They assigned me the least performing territory. And no offense to anyone that lives in upstate New York, because I did find that it was the most amazing place, but it happened to be the territory because we didn't get a lot of business from there that no one wanted to work with. And so I took over this upstate New York territory and ended up building relationships and getting huge deals. And I increased sales from that region by 300% in the first year or something. And so it was really great. And my boss and I ended up doing a road trip out there, which is about, 3 or 4 hour drive from Boston each way. And we totally bonded. We finally got to know each other. And then what happened, I was on vacation. I went away to California for vacation, and she, unbeknownst to me, was going to a competitor. My boss resigned. My boss, who was the manager of the group, resigned and went to a competitor. And I was on vacation and I got a call from her on vacation. And, this was before everybody had cell phones with connections everywhere. I mean, it was really strange to get a call from her. And she said, hey, you better call the CEO because I just gave my notice. I'm leaving. And She was getting escorted out because she was going to a competitor. And suddenly everybody was trying to take on that position. It was like all hell broke loose. And so she gave me the tip off, which I'm forever grateful for. And so then I called the CEO and I said, hey, you took me to dinner and told me if I moved to Boston, I would be getting this management position. And I've done everything that you've asked. Like this is mine. And that was something that was really hard to say, first of all, because of course, but it was based on the advice of that mentor. So my mentor, Robin Moody, amazing. Anyway, so then I did that and then I was promoted. I got the job. But then everybody really hated me because who is this 26-year-old manager running a division that, people who had been there much longer than me, they were like 10, 15-year veterans and, working as senior underwriters, thinking that they would get the job. So that was really hard. I remember nobody talked to me for the first, I don't know, what felt like forever. It was probably a few weeks, but no one spoke. But the interesting thing
that's
was,
nothing.
it was probably more, but I don't know. It felt like forever in my memory. But what happened was that they needed my approval. So a manager, one of the things besides managing a team was we had approval for certain levels of proposals that would go out if they were over a certain amount. And anytime we had a big deal, they would need my approval. And so they had to come to me. They had to get my sign off. And in that process, I just learned to keep an open door policy, be helpful as much as I can. And I asked good questions. I provided support. And about a year later, I would say that everyone came around and I had earned their respect as a manager. It wasn't just something handed to me, but I had earned it.
So I'm curious, there you are, you're still pretty young. What enabled you to work through that, knowing that people resented you?
I think I didn't know it then, but I think the trauma of my early adolescence was what got me through, because I was in a household where I would come home and I didn't know what I would come home to. And I raised myself at that time. I had to. I remember having Christmases where I would come home and my mom was passed out drunk on the floor and I would cook Christmas dinner, which as a 12-year-old was sauteing some, turkey lunch meat from the fridge. So I think I had those experiences, which again, I had sort of numbed out, and I did come back to them later, which we'll get to. But I think having that survival instinct of just, this is what I need to do. And oh, by the way, during that time of my adolescence, I got straight A's. I came to school high every day of my 8th grade year, every single day, but I got straight A's.
That's amazing. I mean, that is really, and you said you were in a gang too.
I was in a gang. Yes.
That's amazing. That's a whole nother episode, I think.
That's a whole nother episode it is, but
that's a whole different organizational culture. We could talk about that.
Yeah. Well, what I would say about that, just because I do feel like a lot of us have dark places that we may or may not have fully unpacked. And again, I've unpacked that time now, like recently. This was 30 years ago. Yeah. And so I did a lot of work. I've done a lot of self-healing and personal and professional development. But I will say that those dark patches have many gifts for us when we are ready to go into those portals of our evolution, when we are ready. I certainly wasn't ready earlier. I think it played a role in my ability to power through. And by the way, talk about fight or flight response, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. People pleasing is a trauma response. And I was very much a people pleaser because of my childhood trauma. Maybe if I do everything right, mom will stop drinking. Maybe if I do everything right, dad would be around and pay attention to me. So I got really good. That's why I was so good at, what does the teacher need? Oh, I'll do it. What's the A? Oh, I can get there. I was always really good at that.
Wow. And yet, though, I'm thinking about, there you are, you were bold enough to reach out to the CEO with some people really supporting you too. Yes. And getting into that elevated role, and then all these people reporting to you, kind of probably giving you, evil eyes or, all that. And and you were able to work through that,
Yeah.
and get the job done and earn their respect and their trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty remarkable. That's very remarkable. So take us
Thank you.
forward from there.
Sure. Well, so when I was managing, I discovered that I didn't really like managing. I didn't get to do all the fun stuff that I liked doing before, which was doing the deals. It was more of the annoying stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
I was 27 at the time and wanted to go to business school. I figured I was really passionate about something called triple bottom line development. And so in my job at the time, I was working with real estate developers who were taking contaminated property and converting it into some condo project or some reuse. And that's why I was working in environmental insurance. That's why they needed that risk transfer. And so I thought, gosh, I want to be on the developer side, and I want to play a role in cleaning up contaminated property and creating not just luxury condos, but community centers and spaces where there's, renewable energy and solar panel derived energy, so that people can be part of connecting to the environment. And it's not just about profit, but also people and planet. So triple bottom line: planet, people, profit. And so that's when I started looking at MBA programs. I got into MIT Sloan, and I started business school in 2008. It was a 2-year program. And when I graduated, it was the crisis of 2008, if you recall. It was the last financial crisis. And going to MIT Sloan, one of the top business schools, in the world, I couldn't get a job. I remember it was, real estate business was tanking. Nobody was hiring. Even the people that graduated in 2009, the year before me, were still looking for jobs a year later. So I kind of got lucky and I joined a firm. I got into commercial real estate brokerage at this small boutique firm. Really cool, really high energy, really great people. And I just loved it. It was a fun place to work. It was the first small company, entrepreneurial type company I'd worked for. It was my first experience with that. And I quickly rose to the top. It was about, a lot of it was location strategy. So we worked with the burgeoning tech industry in Boston. This was 2010.
Yeah.
And Kendall Square was just taking off and everything was happening, the tech mile. And so it was a great place to be. And I loved it. But I also felt that there was one lens that decisions kept being made under, and it was profit and profit alone. Profit alone. And I still, even though I couldn't get a job doing my dream real estate, triple bottom line projects, I still felt this desire to do something more than just make companies a ton of money. And plus, I started to see that this lifestyle of success, and working in real estate, there are people that made it really big financially, but then they started to buy into these lifestyles that required them to be always making a lot. And it was like a prison. And I watched my colleagues get into this, and, I've found myself on that hedonic treadmill, so to speak, where you're just constantly looking for more and what else can you do? And it just breeds a culture of work hard and play harder, which was fun, but it started to really bother me in my yoga practice, which I should have mentioned earlier. Yoga started when I was in high school. Actually, it was my father who introduced me to yoga, and it really stuck with me. And I always practiced, sometimes 5 times a week even. It was my main go-to movement. And I did my teacher training while I was in business school, right before business school. And it was during my yoga practices that I couldn't avoid the voice in my heart and head that was telling me that this isn't a good use of my energy. This isn't what I'm here to do.
Right.
I felt like a lack of purpose. Plus, I felt a lot of things I felt wrong to be sitting down with the executives of a company, hearing them tell us about how much they cared about their culture and their people. And yet, at the end of the day, they needed a 2-year ROI on a headquarter move, which is ridiculous. You can't get that.
Yeah.
And so I just got frustrated. And in the meantime, I was burning both ends of the candle in terms of my energy. I was going to networking events in the morning and I was working all day. I would eat lunch in front of my computer. I would have a networking event in the evening. I didn't get to have dinner. Oh, but I had 2 glasses of wine. And, it started to become this unhealthy pattern. And my health, I started to notice that I kept getting recurring infections and I kept getting sick and I would just pop pills, which is what the doctor told me to do. And, I didn't realize that I was not balanced. I was not balanced. And then it was when I met my now husband, João, who is from the Azores. And I remember when I met him, we actually met online and I saw his name, Joao, and I was like, what, who is this Yoao? And what are the Azores? Like, what is this place? Right. And this was back in 2011. And so we met and we ended up getting engaged and I wanted a destination wedding. And we came to São Miguel Island, which is the main island of the 9 islands of the Azores archipelago.
Oh, okay.
And I just was like blown away. I traveled the world. I had been to 40 countries, but I'd never been to a place this magical, this alive, with the food so fresh and with nature so just the vibration of nature was just so green and so brilliant. And of course, we did our wedding here in 2013. We did our wedding, which was really beautiful and really special. We're actually celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary this year.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. And then in the process of this wedding planning came these big existential questions because I would come home from work and just be exhausted, or I would come home after not having dinner and having a few glasses of wine. And then Joao would be upset that I didn't have energy to go out, And so we had these conflicts that were derived from my lack of meaning and purpose at work. And so we started talking about what brings us purpose and what are our values. And it was in that conversation that we talked about, well, why don't we move to the Azores? And it was my aunt Minu. My aunt Minu had passed away while I had started business school. And I had some money from her life insurance policy that was just sitting in a bank account. And so it was that money that we used to buy the property here, which is why our center is called Minu Vida. Vida is Minu. Minu is an honor to my aunt Meenakshi is her full name. Yeah, and it's about living your dreams.
Oh wow! So you envisioned this land and everything you bought there. This was back right around the time that you got married. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, we bought the land. It was 2 years later officially. So it took a while to get the property. And that's a whole nother story. It was not that easy to find the property, but it was the third one, 3 times the charm.
I see. But you had your sights set on moving there and establishing something there that was going to become a business of some type. It wasn't just, let's go live there.
Exactly. Yeah. So we had planned, when this idea came up with the wedding planning of living in the Azores, it was like, well, what would we do? And what are our values? What's our purpose? And that's when we had these Monday night brainstorming sessions. So every Monday, because Monday can always be tough for the week. If you aren't happy in your work, Monday can be the hardest, or Sunday. And we would have these Monday night brainstorming sessions and we would talk about, well, what could we do? And okay, would we be able to make a living from that? And does that exist? And what about this? And we would look at, and there wasn't anything here. I mean, this was Azores in 2012. It's so different now. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but we were pioneering a new market.
Yeah.
And it was exciting and thrilling. And it was really important that it was something that we felt aligned to our purpose and what we wanted to be doing. And so Joao wanted to lead hikes and he wanted to cook meals using local and seasoned ingredients. I wanted to teach yoga again, which I had to give up because I was working in this world of networking and I couldn't keep a regular yoga class. And together we looked at in what way could we do that? And it was combining hiking, food, and yoga into experience travel.
Mm.
This was around the same time that Airbnb started. Airbnb started in 2011. And so our concept was to host people as friends. So we drew from inspiration from Airbnb. We were one of the first users of Airbnb. I remember I used to put Airbnb receipts for my company bills for travel. And they were like, what are you staying at other people's houses for? That's so weird. I remember we were the first users, like the first couple hundred probably, but then we also drew from the Appalachian Mountain Club, which if you're in the area, you know, AMC, you can borrow gear, there's guides, they connect you to the nature so that you're not just taking a selfie and calling it a pretty picture, you're connecting.
Right. So that's really interesting. You built on, I love the way you're unfolding your story here in terms of all along the way, even though, you know, it sounds like, oh, you know, you're really smart and you thought of all these great ideas, but you always, it sounds like always you had mentors or you had resources in terms of ideas or things that you looked at. You didn't just try to invent new wheels. You looked at what wheels were already out there, and yet you were inventing, but you were also drawing from what already existed too, it sounds like. And
yeah, I mean, I think we were drawing inspiration from what we like. You know, we kept thinking, well, we like to travel in this way. You know, why don't we build a place like that? Well, who else is doing that, and how do they do it? And then that gave us stepping stones, if you will, for our model.
So it sounds like it's evolved over time as well. What does it look like today?
Yeah, it has. And especially post-pandemic, we're so grateful that we got through that. And by the way, we got through the pandemic because we applied our triple bottom line philosophy and business management style to the way we run things. And that is for sure how we got through the pandemic. And we have maintained our entire staff.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we're really, really proud of that. And so today, we have a 5-suite lodge and learning center, so we can host about 10 to 12 people at once. And people can come as independent travelers, where we're like a bed and breakfast, and we have an on-site guest manager who can help with curated recommendations, where to go, and bookings. And we may take people on a hike depending on when we're leading hikes, and they may join a yoga class with me. Other way people come, and this is the area that I'm focusing more on now, is on these transformational leadership retreats, where since the pandemic, I started taking some of our way of managing and some of our way of being back to my old world of my clients who were focused on profit alone, with the, you know, with the entry point of, hey, I want to teach mindful leadership to help with employee engagement and burnout and this great resignation culture that we've experienced. And so now people are coming here to experience in-person guided hikes where we put into practice aspects of silence and self-inquiry, where our practice of movement isn't just exercise, but it's about identifying parts of ourselves, what keeps us from compassion, how are we truly aligning with what our values are and our metrics of success.
And it gives people space and the opportunity to really discover that for themselves. It's not just, do it the way Rimi does it. It's you provide kind of the container and the tools for people to do that. So, I'm curious. So there's a lot of different ways people can go through transformations, of course, and that sounds amazing. And I know that there's lots of ways for people to learn more about what you're doing and providing, and I appreciate the all the foundations that you offered in your story that give us a really good picture of how you have built everything to where you are today. I want to leave them with wanting a little more. And so what would be the best way for people to learn more and find you?
Yeah, sure. Well, the best way is my website, rimichakra.com. But it's worth noting that I have a book coming out that I've co-authored with an amazing woman, mentor, friend, and colleague, Samantha Anderson. It came out of, we had a retreat plan during the pandemic. We had a retreat plan for 2020, which the pandemic then, of course, pushed off. And that turned into an online course. And that turned into, oh my gosh, we need to write a book because this is so meaningful. And it's giving women a path to leadership that allows them to nurture their roots. So we're not looking at success and health and happiness as three separate pathways.
Love it.
That there's one way, and that way is in and down into our roots. And so that book is coming out this October, and Samantha and I, are both leading various tasters and sneak peeks of the practices from the book. And that is at rootzillions.com. It's like resilience, but root zillions.
We'll have that all in the show notes. And I can tell you right now, and I don't mind saying this, we will have you back, maybe the two of you back, to talk about the book and all that work, because I think that really, it relates beautifully to this whole notion of work from the inside out. And so I don't want to shortchange that piece of your work. So I'd rather have you back for that.
Yes.
So when we
would love Samantha too. Yeah.
Oh, I have no doubt. In this conversation, I just want you to leave us with one little more tidbit. And that is, so if you had to give somebody who's anticipating their own change or transition professionally at this point in time, what would be a key piece of advice you might give them as they're thinking things through?
Yeah, I would say notice where you're putting your energy and your focus, because oftentimes when we notice where we're putting our energy, we notice very quickly what might be depleting and what lights us up. And if you can start to notice where you're putting your energy, and even in your thoughts, like what way are you approaching a new job or a transition? Is it, oh, nobody's going to hire me, or I don't know. Or is it, oh my gosh, I'm so excited and I love doing XYZ and I notice that lights me up. If you can notice where you put your energy, energy flows where our attention goes. And so that will lead you where you want to be going. Look where you want to be going.
That's great. I love it. Energy flows where your attention goes. We're going to leave it at that. And Rimi Chakraborty, thank you so much for being here today. We will see you again. Definitely. I can't wait for your book and can't wait to meet Samantha.
Oh.
And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Tammy. What an honor to share what I have to share with you and your listeners. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Rimi Chakraborty. It was so interesting to speak with her and to learn about her early life, her transitions, and current work. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 223. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out: Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Rimi, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? It would be so helpful if you would write a brief review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to do. Just go to my website, tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Just go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would always appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.